Steve Malman is one of the best known attorneys in the city by far. And it's not just because he's running the commercials. He's done a good job for years, made a bunch of money for his clients, and tried to right some wrongs. And the older you get, the more interested you are in not being set financially, but trying to make sure that people don't get hurt unnecessarily. And I remember when my own mother had to go into an extended elder care facility. It's a really hard transition.
Awful.
Kind of brutal.
Very, and it's very expensive, too.
So this week, a record settlement, and it brings up the larger conversation of what's the state of elder care in this country, because guess what? Not exactly breaking news. We're living longer, and we have less care to take care of those who are living longer. Right. Steve Malman joins us now. Good morning, Mr. Malman. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Tell me about the case this week.
It's a very sad case. We were hired by a woman named Kim Triplett to represent her mom, Betty Patterson, who was a resident at Providence Palos Nursing Home. And Betty had fallen and broke her hip at home, which is a very common thing in the elderly population, that they fall and break their hip and they end up in a nursing home. Betty had some illnesses. She had probably about 6 months to live, but she was medically stable. And she had 5 amazing children, very involved in her life, a husband of 50 years who visited her twice a day in the nursing home. Her children visited daily. One of her daughters even moved in the room at the nursing home to be with her.
No kidding.
So this was an incredibly close family, wonderful kids. One son lived in Texas. He called daily, flew in as often as possible to see her. She was really an amazing woman. You know, came from nothing, raised a beautiful family. 2 of her sons served in the military, educated, excellent careers.
And she should have been able to. She should have been able to be in this medical facility with her family not having to be concerned about her care. I know she was on oxygen, and my understanding of the case is power outage. The oxygen is off. She isn't given the immediate emergency help she needs, and she dies.
Right. Well, this is a story of what we see in a lot of nursing homes, understaffed and undertrained. On this particular day, they were short-staffed, and they sent a CNA to cover Betty's room who wasn't trained in what Betty's conditions were or how to operate the oxygen machine that provided her oxygen. And when the power went out, the nurse on staff that day also wasn't trained and didn't know the oxygen concentrator, didn't have a battery backup. So she was informed the oxygen went out because the power went out in the room, and she simply went to lunch.
Oh,
my client in the room started searching for a nurse, searching and searching, couldn't find anybody. Her sister walks in the nursing home because she was visiting, helped her search. And in fact, they found this CNA who didn't know what she was doing.
The CNA, by the way, is a certified nursing assistant. It's an entry-level nurse.
Correct. So they dragged in a portable oxygen tank themselves. They hooked her up. But because the CNA was untrained, they didn't give her enough oxygen, and she suffocated to death over 20 minutes.
Oh, my God. I mean, it's an awful story. And I would like to be able to tell you it has never happened before and it'll never happen again. But that is not the case. Thank goodness you were able to give the family some justice here. It's awful. They're not going to have their mom around. She certainly should not have gone through this hell, and the family the hell they're going through now. But having said all of that, what does it tell you about this day? And listen, I'm not here. Steve Malman's not here. We're not here to slam nursing homes. God bless you if you go to work and you're doing the job. God bless you if you own the place and you're doing the job. But everybody in that industry knows that it is not being done at 100% across the board, and it's a scary situation we're in. So is this going to get worse before it gets better?
Yes, it's getting worse. And the main issue is it's not the nurses and CNAs, it's the ownership and their training and understaffing. Many of these places just put profits over people. So they really will cut staff. Now, in this particular place, they were undertrained and understaffed. We don't know exactly why, but it is getting worse right now. Through COVID, they had staff shortages. Now there's really no excuse they can staff up, but they choose not to. And 94% of all nursing homes across the country are understaffed.
94%?
That's awful.
Wow. Holy
unbelievable.
mackerel. All right, now, is it state regulated, federally regulated, or both?
Both, exactly. It's both. State and federal. It's a little complicated, but yes, they're regulated by both.
So who in Springfield is taking an interest in doing something about this, or who in Washington? Is anybody up front about this? Or, this is, again, Steve, one of the things that we try to do here is go, yeah, you got to vote. You absolutely got to vote, but we're trying to help people figure out who to vote for. Here's an issue you ought to care about, because somebody in your life's getting older. Maybe it's you, and you're going to need this kind of help. So are any politicians doing the right thing about this?
So we are trying. There are lobbyists who are trying. Governor Pritzker signed an order during COVID giving about $700 million to these nursing homes to help them hire more staff. The law was specifically designed that they could only use it for staffing, yet somehow they were able to pull this money out of those homes, and staffing didn't seem to increase anywhere. So I think they tried. I don't think it was successful. It's such a big problem. There's so many nursing homes. The population of nursing homes is so big. It's a very big problem to solve, and a lot of it's about money. And whether the state has enough money is the issue right now.
But, Andre, you know this. If you don't put the pressure on these places of business to operate at the best possible level and at the safest possible level, and the only way you can do that is through the law, and the law is crafted by politicians, then you don't have a system. And the system can go awry, and people will go, well, hopefully we won't have a problem tomorrow, and somebody dies.
Yeah, I completely agree. Steve, do you hope that this settlement shows that there does need to be some accountability at all elderly care facilities?
Yeah, well, first of all, this was a verdict. This was a jury trial verdict. Our trial team was just amazing. What happened in this case is they denied fault on this case for 5 years of litigation. They only admitted fault the day before we went to trial, and it was time to come before the jury and be judged. Wow. And I think these nursing homes need to learn a lesson, which is admit your fault, take accountability, apologize. In fact, the first question the defense lawyer asked my client or said was, I'm sorry. They apologized, but they had no remorse. Mm-hmm. An apology without remorse is not an apology at all. And these nursing homes need to realize that these elderly people, they're still human beings. They have loved ones that care about them. They have life to live. They deserve to be treated humanely. And like you said, I'm not here to bash all nursing homes. We just think they need to step up and do the right thing, which is provide proper care and treatment.
And unfortunately, calling out the nursing homes that are doing the right thing doesn't move the needle the way explaining that there's a massive problem and a bubble here that could burst unless action's taken. So here's an issue you ought to care about. And I wish, Steve Malman, that you could tell me, here's 5 politicians that care about it and they're doing something about it. But you don't have that list, and neither do I.
No, we don't. Like I said, we've tried. We've tried. We have lobbyists. We're trying to do what we can, but it's a difficult issue. There's so many issues on the plate in Springfield. Like I said, there was a bill signed and there was money given to these nursing homes, but somehow it seemed to evaporate, and the staffing issues we continue to see.
It's just something basic, like you have this many residents, therefore you have to have this many critical care
completely.
people on hand. Otherwise, you're in violation.
I agree. I almost think that our either property taxes or however they allocate services, we pay taxes into it. A portion should go, of course, it goes to the schools and to help the homeless and whatever. But a portion of that needs to go to facilities that help the elderly and care for the elderly.
But
at the end
you
of their
have
lives.
to, and I think Malman's here to say this, you have to be able to properly oversee that the money's being spent. So if Pritzker hands you $700 million, tells you can only spend it this way, and you find out it's not being spent that way, who's watching that store?
You need someone to oversee it. Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, we appreciate the education. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you. Anytime.
Best of the family. That's Steve Malman and Malman Law.